files, all examples of evidence often collected in a murder case. But did you know some important evidence can be destroyed under Idaho law?
CBS 2's Lauren Clark tells us why national experts are saying that all of us should be worried. It's a story you'll see only on CBS 2.
Crime scene tape, red and blue police lights, law enforcement, all common sights of the scene of a murder. But what happens to the evidence collected in these cases? You might assume it's the law to preserve what's gathered here, but in the state of Idaho, there's nothing guaranteeing that.
Idaho doesn't have any uniform instruction about what to do when there's a murder. What do you do with the evidence?
The gem state does not have any laws requiring evidence to be preserved in a murder case. This means legally, it can be destroyed. BSU professor and Idaho Innocence Project director Greg Campikian is considered one of the foremost forensic DNA experts in the United States.
That's fantastic.
He played an instrumental role in the acquittal of American exchange student Amanda Knox. He's also worked on a number of cases here in Idaho. Campikian says he doesn't believe law enforcement officers here are carelessly throwing away DNA swabs or murder weapons. He claims he sees the opposite.
The cases that I've worked on, this has not been a major problem. There's always, they can't keep everything. You always wish there was more evidence, but they're holding on. I've looked at evidence in the state that's 20, 25 years old.
So why then do some worry about a lack of law for Idaho murder cases?
Here's the main concern. With no law on the books, how evidence is handled and how long it's retained could be different here in Boise than if it happened here in Payette.
It just is no longer acceptable that there not be uniform standards across the state for how to preserve biological evidence.
Rebecca Brown is the policy director for the National Innocence Project. She analyzes laws on evidence retention across the country and advocates for specific uniform laws for each state. On this issue, Idaho is in the minority. Only 7 other states don't have a law on evidence retention on murder cases. 17 other states have laws, but they're considered by the National Institute of Standards and Technology as too restrictive. The remaining 25 states have laws that meet the NIST standards. Brown says states that automatically retain evidence in murder cases permanently serve their citizens best.
When there is a viable claim of innocence and there is no opportunity to test the evidence connected to that case, nobody benefits.
Campikian says without these laws, there's the possibility for grave consequences in our state.
If you trust your government to always be right, and I don't think there are many people who do, then you don't have any worry. But the fact of the matter is, we've had several thousand exonerations in this country. We've had over 120 people freed from death row who were innocent. So even when it's taken most seriously, mistakes are made.
I was just an innocent man sitting in a jail cell waiting to die.
One of these mistakes happened in the case of Kirk Bloodsworth. Bloodsworth was found guilty of the murder of a young girl near his home, a murder he did not commit.
I think that's one of the worst things that can have happen to a person.
Bloodsworth says he later found out about a new form of DNA testing. He was certain it would prove his innocence while behind bars. However, he says prosecutors told him evidence in the case was gone.
They wrote me back and told me that it had been inadvertently destroyed.
Bloodsworth says that evidence was later found in the judge's chambers. It led to him being freed and the real killer being charged in the crime. He credits the saved evidence for saving his life.
If that evidence truly was destroyed, what would have happened?
I would have been executed or lived my life out in a prison cell. Wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here today talking to you guys.
Bloodsworth now is the interim director of Witness to Innocence, a nonprofit group that opposes the death penalty. He says Idahoans should be concerned that there's no law regarding murder evidence to be preserved.
We have to stop it once and for all before it could happen to somebody else. Maybe your next door neighbor. Anybody in Boise, anybody in Kuna, anybody anywhere.
Now, Lauren is continuing to dig further into this issue. She's continuing to work on this months-long investigation. So stay tuned as we show you law enforcement's perspective and talk about what they do to preserve evidence.